Hello. How's it going? How's everyone today? Hi, Linda. How you doing?
I'm okay, except my butt hurts because I was sitting on a train for most of the weekend. So, but I'm
What
okay.
what were you sitting on a train for? Why was the train sitting?
Well, I left last week on Wednesday, and I met a McGill friend. We were in the same program together at McGill, celebrating 40 years of having graduated from McGill, which is kind of
Wow.
crazy. I know, 40 years. So she lives in Montreal still, and I, of course, don't. So I had to take the train in from Toronto to Ottawa. We decided to meet in Ottawa for a few days and wander around and go see a play and go to the National Gallery and hang out and
Nice.
perhaps have a few glasses of wine,
Perhaps.
perhaps. But it was
One or two.
but Kathy, it was kind of crazy because now I love Via Rail. Don't get me wrong. I love
Hmm.
Via Rail. I went, business class, which is really cool. That means like you get a meal and you have room to stretch out, all of that wonderful stuff. But my train was delayed 2 hours going.
What?
2 hours. Yeah. We kept sort of stopping for like 20 minutes here, half an hour there, 10 minutes there. It was ridiculous. 2 hours. So my butt was so
That's fun.
right. And then coming back yesterday, it was delayed for an hour again, which meant that I missed my connection because I live sort of north of Toronto and it takes me another hour to get to where I'm supposed to go and then more time to get where I'm supposed to go. So, this trip turned into an entire day. And I'm not going to say wasted because time reading and spending time reflecting and all of that isn't wasteful. It's just that I really wanted to get home. So yeah, so there's my rant and there's my rave, and okay, I'm good now. Yeah, I'm good now. I'm good.
You're good now.
Good. Good.
My son's birthday was this week, so he turned 20.
Wow,
I
that's
can't
crazy,
I know. I can't believe it. He was just born last week, so I don't know what the hell
right?
happened, right? Like
It's weird, isn't it? It's like a time warp, but we're all in a time warp right now, Kathy.
it is. It just I like it literally just and it's so funny like if you saw him you would never even guess that he was 20 years old, right?
Wow.
He's got like a big practical ZZ top um
Yes,
beard
I
going
do.
on and the
Oh
whole
my
what's that? Oh
gosh.
yeah, it's funny because like um even his teachers are like, he'll do tests or whatever, and they have to put their ID out, and his teacher will be like,
Wow.
because in his ID, he didn't have the beard, like, or as big of a beard. And now it's like really growing. And he's like, if I didn't see you every day, I'd be like, I don't know, man.
But that's so amazing when you think about it. 20 years old. Who would have thought, right? Like when you have a baby, you don't even think about it. And sometimes when you think about it, you think, well, that's so far away. That's
Yeah.
really so
Yeah.
far away.
Yeah.
And then
You
boom.
don't realize it's like next week, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I know. I know. I do.
You just don't realize like it's so fast. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, otherwise, things are good. Things are good. But last week we talked about accidental hauntings, how
Yes.
they can happen.
Yes.
This week we're talking about cleansings. So how do we cleanse them if we bring them home? What do we do? Like how do we get rid of these things that
Yeah, right. I mean, and honestly, there's so many opinions on this. Just as there are a lot of opinions on, can I bring things home and accidental hauntings?
absolutely.
How can I
Yeah.
do that? So, yeah, and I'm sure you've heard a lot of things about how to get them gone. Um, but it's interesting how a lot of people will say, yeah, you really can't get them gone because, you can't kick people out. It's like at home, you can't kick people out. But I say, with the right intention, I think you can. You can absolutely kick them out. But it depends on how clingy they are, you know? Like your kids. Do you kick them out? And how close really are they?
Right? Right?
But have
I
you had
I think
experiences with
too.
this? Yeah.
What's that?
Have you had experiences with this kind of thing too? Getting rid of things, clearing things?
So so here's one of my things, and it's going to be very, like, a lot of people aren't going to agree, and I'm okay with that. I don't really care. Um, you know, um, when we were in a team, we actually really didn't believe in cleansing all that much. Okay.
Yes.
And that was sort of that's where we more or less came from, depending upon what it is that you're dealing with. But sometimes it's not so much the ritual as it is the change of behavior towards it. And, there were especially, like, there were times where when you can really change the behavior. And first of all, it's acknowledging what it is. And I mean, as we know, negative things have, particular behaviors, as well as, more positive things. So, somebody, might be just in a place where they're trying to kick out, grandma. but but they're treating it the same as if you would some sort of negative entity of a sort. And when we talk about negative entities, we don't always mean demonic. And the amount of demonic hauntings is like this on a scale of like that. So, the first thing that people always do is they go, I have a demon in my house. Or you have a mouse.
Yeah. Yeah. Or a squirrel in the attic.
Or a squirrel in the attic, or you have, like, shutters that aren't working properly, or whatever. Like, there's other reasons for the things that are happening.
That's right.
And, first of all is nailing down what it is.
Yes. And that's the thing that a lot of people don't do, is look for logical explanations, because most people want to have something going on.
A lot of people, yeah, 100%. Most people, a lot of people, like, we've dealt with people where, I mean, I don't even know how many times I've said to people, like, look, this is not a haunting. Yeah. We're not feeling anything. We're not picking up anything. Like, we are literally looking at, your electricity going, because you need some issues fixed. And as you know, EMF can create, the appearance of a lot of things that, can resemble paranormal.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Right. But they don't want to listen to that. They want to go, well, no, because it's more popular to be haunted.
Yeah, they'll fight you tooth and nail sometimes on that. I mean, literally, They will fight you tooth and nail. And some of them will even go to multiple teams and say, well, that team, they didn't help me out because, they were bad. Therefore, so we want you to come in. I want you to help us. And then another team will come in and say, again, there's really nothing going on. Or they'll say, well, your house is settling. Have you called in somebody? Maybe you've got animals or critters in your attic. And they once again will say, no, these people are crazy. Mm-hmm. Something going on. So let's dismiss team number 2, bring in team number 12. And then finally they'll bring in team number 12 who really loves this stuff. And they'll say, oh yeah, you have.
Oh yeah. They'll come in with their Ouija board and their, shakeable trolls and be like, we're going to charge you, $500, and we're going to say that you're haunted, and, it came in through the portal of your toilet, and,
the portal of your toilet. Oh my God. Yeah, you're right though. You're right. It's true. But
yeah.
But it's true. I mean, it's like anything else. People often.
And then the cycle will begin again, because they'll go back to that first team and go, well, they said that my toilet was haunted, so you've got to come in and take care of this and all. And it's just like a big circle, right?
Or they will invite something in eventually, because somebody will give them the wrong advice. And that's usually what happens too. I mean, I hate to say it, but yeah. It's crazy.
Well, I think too is after identification, then you've got to kind of decide, okay, look it. if this is just a harmless, thing that's sort of passing through or maybe just hanging out, do you really need to cleanse it? Is it really creating any issues within the home? Like besides maybe, the lights going off and on or something like that. And the problem is that a lot of people become, they create this sheep mentality.
Yeah.
And so if one person is feeling high stress because of this, they tend to spread that out. And I mean, literally, we were just talking about this. We see this on social media all the fucking time, right?
Yes.
One person has a shit fit about something, and now all of social media is, but that's exactly what happens within a home. And so you have to, contain and maintain that energy. And once you recognize it and identify it for what it is, you might not be able to identify it to the extent of this is so-and-so and this is so-and-so, but at the very least, you should be able to identify it as to negative or not negative.
Yes, that's true.
And then let it be. So there was one of the cases that, and the thing is, we also sometimes don't know why a spirit is in our home.
True.
And even if it may have a more negative connotation to it, sometimes it's very protective. And I've talked about my home where I know that there's something here. Some people would view that as being negative because of the fact that if there's people that come in, if you come into my home disrespectfully, I guess, not so much even towards me, but towards my house.
Yes.
People have, said that they felt like they were getting pushed down the stairs. They felt, negative kind of pokings at them, like more physical, I guess, attacks. My dogs have sat outside or even looked up the stairs and have sat there and just growled at like nothing that, we're seeing or picking up. But for my son and I and my daughters, we're fine. We're perfectly fine. It's a matter of respecting, the place. So some people would look at that as negative. Well, it's negative to you because you're coming into my home and being disrespectful towards me or my house. So for you, it's negative.
That's really true.
I'm good, right? I'm good with it because it's protecting my home. We actually had a case, and I have talked about this, and I can't give too much, obviously, information in regards to it. But we had a case, when I was very first started off as an investigator, and where we went to this home, and it was mostly the man of the house, the husband or whatever, stepfather, was getting attacked. He was the one that he had scratches. He was getting pushed. There was a lot of activity towards him. And the rest of the family was fairly fine, like not really too much going on. And so we came in and we started investigating. And I mean, there was things that were not okay. Okay. And, we saw like locks on the outside of the children's doors.
Oh, gotcha.
And, things like this. And we were very like, what in the hell is going on? Like, but it's not our business. That's not what we're there for. Right. And we're limited because we have no proof towards anything. But it was weird because we were standing there and we saw, like, I saw it and I was like, the hell is this? But it literally looked like a giant lizard.
Oh, I remember you mentioning something.
Yeah. And I was very new at not only investigating, but really seeing a lot of the paranormal. You know what I mean? Because when you're looking at the paranormal compared to, let's say, somebody's relative who's passed over, it's two different realms, like 200% different realms. The things that you see on the paranormal, you have to have a strong stomach for. Like, you have to be in a good place for this, like, in order to see a lot of the stuff that's happening. And because it is a completely different dimensioning, like, realm type of energy, right? And this is what I saw, and I thought, okay, like, but I was like, okay, I feel a little crazy here because this is what I'm seeing, but I only see things in my mind. It's not like I'm seeing them with my eyes. I see it with my mind. And so, we left and I said, and one of the other investigators, what we used to do is, we used to write things down so that we weren't talking and comparing and making our own cheap energy, right? So, she was like, okay, write down what you both saw, because there was another medium there as well. And we were both writing it down. I said, I feel kind of stupid even handing this over, because I don't even literally we both wrote down lizard, like giant lizard, like this is what we both saw. But then we wrote down, all the other things that we had picked up while we were there. And we felt like there was something untowardly going on from the stepfather towards, the stepdaughters. Now, obviously we have no proof. We can't phone up the police and say a giant lizard told us this was going on. Like, we have nothing to go like that wouldn't be, it's not right for us to go that place. You know what I mean? So before anyone says, why didn't you report it? What exactly are you going to report? There's nothing to report.
No,
we never saw or witnessed. This is all psychically that we're receiving this information, and there's only so far that you can go with that information.
Yeah, for sure.
So we decided that we were not going to investigate, because again, whatever we picked up, how do we report this? We can't. There's nothing. It's better. You know what I mean? And we just had a funny feeling that this was going to be taken care of fairly soon, because this lizard was there for a reason.
Yes.
And it was going after the father.
Yeah.
It was going after the father purposely to remove him from this. Now, if we had gone in there and cleansed it, where would the protection have been for these children or for anybody within the home? So we had messaged her and we said, look, we don't feel like this is a case that we can particularly take on at this time, but if you need any extra help in the future, blah, 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 blah. And if you ever feel the need, please, by all means, call the police.
Right.
So we gave her as much as we could. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Literally within about 5 or 6 days later, it was less than a week later, she messaged us to say, he moved out.
Wow.
They broke up and he moved out, and the activity had pretty much stopped. He moved out within a couple of days after us being there. Right. The activity she said the activity got crazy over the next couple of days, that he packed up him and his boys and left her and the girls, and they moved out. Him and his kids moved out.
That's so interesting. And
it was
right. Everything happens for a reason.
It does, right? But if we had gone in there that night and, did the hokey pokey and tried to cleanse us out, would that have happened? And exactly. So you don't know, right? Like, you don't know. So, I mean, technically you could look at a great big monster, great big lizard, and go, oh, okay, well, that's negative. We got to get rid of it. But you have to stop and you have to, okay, should we remove this? Have you ever had anything like that happen before? Like, have you ever been in that type of?
Yes. Yeah. And I think often people believe that they need to get rid of things immediately, because what happens is they get scared, and that fear is what drives them to believe, like anything else, oh my gosh, I have a wasp in my house, therefore my mind tells me that I've got a nest. Well, that's not entirely true. You just probably have a little wasp in your house. And if you can find the point of entry, or you can convince it to go away, or you can catch it and just, open the door to leave. And that's sort of what we as a paranormal team, and I think what most paranormal teams with good intentions actually do. You try and find out what's going on. You try and find out the cause, and you try and find out exactly what the purpose is of this haunting. Because most of the time, there's a purpose to it. I mean, and you're right. We've had a couple of those where somebody has been not so nice. And because things are happening in the house, the wife or the children will reach out to us and say, yeah, this is happening. It's terrible. And then you find out, that there's fighting between the husband and the wife. You find out that there's maybe some, rotten activity going on in the home. And that's why these things are happening. I mean, we're surrounded by spirits all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
That's something that people don't realize. When people are alone, yeah, they're alone physically, but they're really not alone because there's a lot going on around them. People don't understand that. And you can attract certain energies based on who you are.
Yeah.
Um, and you can be sort of what's the word I'm looking at, like protected the way you are in your home. You can attract those energies of
Mhm.
protection, or you can also attract energies of, repellent energies, depending on who you are and who you live with. Maybe the person you live with is more repellent than attractant, and that's our job, right, is to try and figure out why this stuff is happening. And absolutely, yeah, oh, I love that. Yes, we are never alone. And we're not. We're never alone. And that's the thing, people don't get it, Kathy. They don't get it.
Yeah.
They don't.
It's just a matter of how much we're able to view of what's going on,
Yes,
right? Are we allowing ourselves to see this and experience what is happening at this moment?
true. And we don't allow ourselves to do that either. I mean, we were talking about this even before we started the show, when we apologized. We were a little late, but we got a little, a little carried away. But it's true though. We don't
Mm.
allow ourselves time. We're always so busy and we're always so bombarded with so much stuff in our lives that we don't sort of feel our environment. And it's actually interesting because I was away. And when you're away and you stay in a hotel, we stayed at this boutique hotel in downtown Ottawa, which was an older home. Yeah. And it was an interesting thing. The person that I was traveling with, she is not really into all of this stuff. And, but when we went into this little boutique hotel, it was a little suite with, 2 bedrooms and a little kitchenette. I did feel the energies that had been there before. And I talked to the room when we went in and I said, hey, we're here. And if there's anybody here, we're not here to bother you. And she said, why are you doing that? Who are you talking to? And I, the energies, because there are energies, whether they're residual or active,
Yeah.
there are energies all around us all the time. And in a hotel, God knows what's been in there. You don't know what's happened, and you don't know who's watching you. You don't know who's stayed.
Yeah.
You don't know anything. So if you're disrespectful to those energies, then you might be opening yourself to a nice big can of worms.
Absolutely. Like there's been so many times and we've talked about this before. Like, a house is really only 4 walls.
Yes,
No matter what size of home you live in, or what size environment it ultimately is surrounded by 4 walls. And what we're throwing into those 4 walls is going to make an impression upon us.
absolutely. It's true.
One of the things, like when we talk about cleansing methods, I guess, like one of the things that we used to do first, and I had created this method because it was just, I was really into the law of attraction. And I mean, so with the law of attraction, and then you look at the paranormal, that's really what you're doing, is you're creating your environment. And so I was like, okay, I want to see if this will work. And I was one of those investigators who would create something like a theory and then start testing it and seeing if it worked, right? And so one of the things, is I created like this notebook method. And it was basically and this would even happen before we actually brought everybody over to investigate, because we wanted to see, there's a lot of times where you don't need a full investigation.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's just a matter of, let's see if we can change the mindset of these people or get them into a better place or a more comfortable place, and see what happens. And so, what it was is, first of all, you don't discuss the paranormal in your home. Like if there was an activity in the house that day, you go outside and you talk about it there, or you go for coffee or go to the mall or go for a walk, because the earth can absorb it. The earth can take it. A
Yes.
shopping mall can take it. That a larger environment in that extent can take a conversation. But when you're constantly having that conversation about what you're scared of within your home, you're creating more of an environment to be scared of, right?
Yeah.
And so then it was basically write down each incident on a separate piece of paper in a notebook. So we would hand the client the notebook, and if there was more members of the family with experiences, here's your notebooks.
Yeah.
And you write down each experience that you're experiencing separate from everybody else's. So what you experience, not what so-and-so is experiencing, or this person, or this person, or this is all about you. And write it down, write it all down to as much as you can possibly get. And then you don't look back at it. You turn the page and you leave that alone. You don't need to go and reread it, because when you're rereading it, you're bringing all of that energy back. But when you're placing it on paper, you're releasing it.
Yes.
So you're getting it out of your system. You're putting it on paper. It's gone.
True.
Right? Or the idea of it is gone. And so the only reason that you need to look back at it, or you don't even need to look back at it, but the only reason the page needs to be turned is if you hand it to a paranormal investigator and say, here, these are all my experiences, his experiences, their experiences. Here, take it all.
Yeah.
And then the other idea was, instead of having the notebook right beside you, because it's too easy. I'm sitting here with my notebook and I'm sitting here doodling, because I do that. That's what I do. I doodle and I talk and I write things down, and that's constantly what I'm doing. Yeah. But the idea is that, so it'd be easy for me if I heard a thump, I'd write down thump. It's easy for me to do that because I've got it right here. But if I had to get up, and let's say it was on top of my fridge and I had to get a chair to go get it,
yeah,
I might not be as enthusiastic as having to, so now I'm automatically, my brain is processing the difference between the paranormal to the normal.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm sitting here and I have access to my notebook and I'm making it easy to create the paranormal, I'm going to make things paranormal. And in my head, I've created things to be scared of, to be worried about, to fear. Yeah. I'm hearing more thumps and bumps and, whatever. Like I'm automatically going to hear that. But if I'm sitting here and let's say I'm watching TV and I hear, okay, well, I'm going to be sitting there and I'm going to go, do I need to go run and get my notebook? Or do I realize that's really just my cat jumping off of something in the bathroom?
Yeah.
I don't need to go write this down.
That's right.
Or maybe I had my window open and the door upstairs closed. Because now I've just literally created normal to the paranormal, or yes, paranormal to the normal. That's yeah. So now I've already automatically eased myself and eased my body, and I'm not freaking out my entire family, and I'm not making everybody panic, and I'm just like, okay, that's cool. Okay. Right?
Yeah.
And it's funny how once we actually decipher how much the paranormal falls away, because now we're not giving it fear. We're not giving it energy. We're not giving it anything. We're just, okay, cool. Now, I mean, if your coffee cup gets up, and I might be more inclined to
yes,
write that down, right? Yeah. But yeah. I even, we even had one person who tried to tell us that their coffee cup flew across the room, when it actually turned out to be, like, once we sat down and we kind of went over it a few times, and yep. And it turned out to be condensation from the cup made it slide about an inch off across the table.
That's funny.
But that's what happens, right? Like.
Yes. And what's good about the notebook method is that, it increases your powers of observation, and you realize some things that, you've interpreted for a long time as being abnormal. They're actually quite normal, especially if you've got multiple people in the family, right? They'll go, well, Mom, that's sort of normal. I've heard that noise for 30 years. It's the fridge.
Yeah. Exactly.
No, and true. Like, not everything has to be cleansed and gotten rid of. And I think that's a huge myth in the paranormal field, that
Mhm.
every haunting, everything that happens needs to be cleansed, because so many people watch those shows, and that's what ultimately happens in those shows. They invite people in, and what do they usually cleanse with? Sage.
Yeah.
They always cleanse with sage. They
Yeah.
call it smudging. They cleanse with sage. And, that's not necessarily what needs to be done, because if you speak to some people, and I've spoken to a lot of people in my career, a lot of people, if it's a particularly negative energy in your house, and it happens to be, and let's face it, like we said before, not everything is, but if it is a particularly nasty negative energy, what does sage really do to that negative energy? Well, it'll just tickle it a little, but it
It's probably just going to make it laugh.
will. Exactly. So you have to be sort of knowledgeable about what's going on in your house. You have to
Yeah.
have, an observant nature. Use a notebook, try and figure this out. Call in a good team who will give you some advice.
Mhm.
But don't panic and say, oh, well, get it out, get it out, get it out. No, not everything needs to be cleansed. And you're right. I mean, it could very well be just, Aunt Matilda, who recently is departed, or maybe they've been departed for a little while. It's close to their birthday or something, and you've
Yeah.
been thinking about it, and you've conjured that kind of energy to come in visitation mode. That could be what's happening. And
Yeah.
that's your job, is to figure this out, not to panic along with the person and say, oh, well, that's it. I'm running and getting sage sticks, and we're going to go and do some strange hoodoo, voodoo, ritual and get it out of here. No.
Well, and the thing is too, is that when you go into a panic, that alone is going to increase the activity right there, and I remember, we had this one, another case where, we had said to them, look, at, what, if you really, really want us to do a cleansing, you know what I mean? Like we can do one. Okay, that's fine. But we will come back in a few days. We want you to do the notebook method first. This is important, right? Because at the very least, it is going to calm you down. And this is after we had done, like, once I created the theory of the notebook and we tested it on many, many families, we knew that this was something that was truly helping people. Like,
Yes.
and so, we said to them, look, at, okay, do this for a few days first, because at the very least, it's going to calm you down. It's going to remove a lot of your fears, and it's going to put you into a better headspace, so that when we do come in and, we'll do a cleansing with you, but you're going to be doing it with us. We're not here to do this for you. That's not our job. The best cleansing is from the actual person who lives within the home, because it's your environment. You own that home. Take charge of it. Take ownership of that space, right? Take ownership of the energy within your home. And so they were all like, yeah, 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 yeah. I am not shitting you. Within 24 freaking hours, these people were calling us in this bloody panic, because apparently somebody down the street had a Bible and had like a day and a half of some sort of, I don't know, religious hubble bubble, and decided that they were going to come over and cleanse the house for them. Well, I'll tell you, everything just blew up after that.
That's horrendous.
Yeah, and we literally said, look, at no, you're stewing in your own mess now.
That's
Sorry.
horrible. That's
We're not this. We're not here for that, because you didn't listen to these instructions. We're not going to waste our time. Come in and do what we do,
yeah.
and then have to come back because you've done something else. So that's a waste of my time. Like, we don't get paid for this. We're volunteers. We're volunteering our time and our energy and our everything else. We're not here on your timeline or for your fantasies or whatever. So if you're going to do this and you're not listening to what we had to say, you're pretty much living with your own shit.
Well, yeah. Good.
But if you continue to follow the methods that we've given you, and the energy should dissipate.
Yes. Yes.
But you have to follow what it is that has been given to you. And maybe that sounds mean and cruel, but quite honestly,
No,
you
it doesn't.
know, yeah, it's, you know,
No, it doesn't sound mean and cruel at all. It's interesting because we've worked with a lot of people, and there's this one couple that we worked with twice. The first time they had a baby, and the child was really little, and of course they started
yeah,
seeing things on
yeah,
their little camera, right? And they got scared, so they had sent us some footage, and definitely it was not just dust particles.
yeah,
It was not, but interestingly enough, they were scared because they had been watching some paranormal shows, and didn't understand that, well, maybe it was just a spirit of protection because children tend to, magnify
yeah,
that, right? And then they realized after we sat down with them and talked to them and pointed things out for them to read, because, education is a good thing, right? They realized, okay, well, that could be what's going on. So the fear was dissipated because the initial reaction was, oh my God, there's something in the house. There's something that's around the baby, and we need to get rid of it. Because let's face, that's what everybody says that you need to do. So when
yeah,
we allayed their fears, and they kept watching the monitor, and then it was really nothing. It was just a spirit of protection around that
mhm,
child. And then when they had their next baby, it was easy because they called us and said, guess what? This is the footage that we're getting from baby number 2. And when you compare it with baby number 1, it was very similar in
yeah,
nature.
yeah.
And this was normal to them now.
And
They
it
were
very well could have been past relatives that were coming for viewing as well, to
exactly.
give their blessing upon the child.
Exactly. But other teams might have come right in and said, "Yep, we got to set up our cameras,"
Yeah,
and the drill. It's
yeah,
crazy. And do you always need cleansing? No, but there are some instances out there and some cases that do require cleansing of some kind. And you've got to be open to different types of cleansing. And you're
yeah.
absolutely right. Most times you need to involve the people that live there because it's their space. So you're giving them advice, but it's not your space, it's their space. So totally.
Absolutely. They own it. And it's interesting too, because there are so many different ways of cleansing. And I mean, obviously, I don't know them all. Like, and there's so many different there's people who are indigenous have their way,
Yep.
and it's very effective for them. And it doesn't mean that it needs to be just for them, though. It's just that we don't might not know the full ritual of it, and neither should we assume what the full ritual is, right? Same
Yep.
as with any country or any religion or anything else. They're all going to have their different ways, or their different ingredients, different whatever it is. Like it's all going to be, but it all should be respected too.
Yes, there's no standard of cleansing your home, particularly like in terms of what ingredients you use. Some people might say, well, don't use this because that's not going to work. But for
Yeah,
some people, that actually does work for them because it speaks to them. It's all about your intentions. It's all about what works for you. Much like, you may not like modern art, but somebody does like modern art. So you don't like their house because it's full of modern art. Same thing. I mean, it speaks to them, it works for them, and it's all about the intention. And so to say that every cleansing needs to be done with sage or with particular crystals or all of that would be, wrong, because it may not work for the person who's cleansing their own environment. So you have to
absolutely.
be very clear about what that person wants, what their personality is like, what makes them feel comfortable. Some people don't like the smell of sage,
Yeah.
and it makes them nauseous, or they don't particularly like it because, it's something that's acrid to them. So don't use sage, use something else.
There's and then we get into things such as exorcisms, which a lot of teams or particular groups will attempt, right? And when we talk about exorcisms, we're not talking about the Catholic exorcism rituals. Okay, we're talking about something that can be
DIY.
extreme. What's the DIY form of exorcisms, and to be honest, those can be extremely dangerous,
Oh yeah.
and people have to be extremely careful of. And there's a reason why priests go to exorcism school, and they learn this it's sometimes for years before they are involved within the actual exorcism of a person. It's not a thing to play with. It's not something that that you take lightly in any form. And we've actually, I know that in the past, not on this particular show, but in the past, we've had people that pretend that they can do exorcisms, and it's quite a scary
Yes, it is.
trail to follow. let's just say that. And because the fact that you don't know what you're doing, you don't know exactly particularly what you're dealing with. And I mean, there's been in the past, for me, that I work remotely and I work with several different teams, and and so I'll have people that contact me and say, look, at what can we take a look in this, or I've even had where they've had their own medium, but they're using a remote medium simply because they're making sure that what they're getting is going to be similar.
Yes, makes sense.
And or it may not be their own medium, but we've had this. I remember one particular case where they basically got a medium from their town and it was a very popular person, and they were basically like that, claiming that whatever was in this home was like from the pits of hell, and and it like it was just and so I wrote what I got, and I basically was able to say a lot of the incidents that I felt had been happening, which aligned with what the clients had said.
Mm-hmm.
And when compared later, and it what I picked up was absolutely nothing compared to what this other psychic had said. And I mean, that's the thing, though, is like without the identification, you could be coming at it from, I mean, basically this woman wanted them to like practically, do some sort of exorcism, fire dance, burn the house down kind of bullshit. And I was just like,
Yeah,
we don't need to do this. Like this is this is not what is happening, and so if people ask, where's the proof? How do you know who's right? Well, if people are no longer being bothered and they feel better and they feel safe within their environment,
yes.
then we know.
Well, that's true. And half the time, you know this, Kathy, half the time, a good way to solve a situation like that, when you're not happy in your home because there's something that you feel that's there, a good resolution is to take matters in your own hands, be respectful, but take back your environment.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And in 99% of situations, and I do mean that, most people who go into their own home and say, listen, you know what, I really don't want you to be here. I don't want to see you. I don't want to experience anything. I'm uncomfortable with this situation. So you really do need to leave, because this is my home and this
Yeah.
is my environment and these are my kids and this is my husband. Please stay away.
Yeah.
They really will. And the situation will improve dramatically, but you have to have good intentions. You
Yeah.
have to be respectful. They have to understand, and you have to say to them, you have to understand that this is my environment.
Yeah.
You have to understand that I have to live with this. I live here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I don't appreciate this. Talk to them like they're a human being, because guess what? They used to be. Well, the
Yeah. At
majority.
some point, 99% of them
Yeah,
were human, right? It's
exactly.
that little amount that maybe you're dealing with an inhuman, or maybe you're dealing with an elemental or whatever, but still, there, just because it's inhuman doesn't mean that it's demonic. Like, and again, that's the other thing that we have to address. Again, I had told you about this, like back in the day when my son was just little. And, every night he was waking up in the middle of the night and screaming that there was like something in his room. There's somebody, the guy was in his room.
Yeah.
And he was just really little. He was only like a year and a half old. And the guy. And I finally, he was pointing in the corner, the guy. And I turned to the corner and I said, get the fuck out of my kid's room.
Very subtle.
Yeah. Like, I said, I can't deal with this. Get the fuck out of my kid's room.
Yeah.
And I mean, and I obviously my child knew I wasn't yelling at him. I was yelling to the corner, and I looked at my son and I watched as he went like this, like his little hands were on his crib and he watched. He was like this.
Yep. There you go.
Right behind me, all the way from one end of the room, all the way to the door. And then he looked back at me and I said, is it gone? And he's like, mm-hmm. And he laid down and he went to bed. And that was the end of that. Like, because this was going on every bloody night, like 2 or 3 times a night. And it was driving me crazy because you're a working single mom. I was like, I need some sleep like at some point in time.
Right.
My kid's exhausted. He's scared out of his mind. Like, you don't know what to do. And, at that point, I was just like, get the fuck out. Like, I can't deal with this. You don't belong here. Get the fuck out of my kid's room. And that was pretty much, it was almost like I felt, I don't know, it sounds weird, but it felt like there was a realization.
Yeah.
That I don't belong here. And the funny part is that throughout probably the next year or two, my son still talked about the guy, until he was probably about 4 or 5 years old, because this happened when he was about a year and a half. So for the next few years, he still talked about the guy, but it was in a different place. Never at night. And there would be times where I'd walk into his room and he had one of those little, I can't remember exactly what they were called. It wasn't like Xbox or anything, but it was made for him, like his age. You know what I mean? It was like a special little gaming system, and it would teach numbers and letters and, all of that fun stuff. Right.
Yes.
And he would have the remote, he'd be holding it, and there would be a remote beside him that he'd set up. And I'd walk in and go, what are you doing? And he'd be like, well, I'm playing with the guy. I was like,
interesting.
Okay. And he's like, go, like, go, So him and the guy were learning the alphabet together. I don't, you know what I mean? But eventually that dissipated and it stopped, right? It did go away. Yes. But, the guy was a good part for a few years, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But
you took it back, right? You actually said, get out of here. And took control. But
we set the boundary. So not at night. Like, you're not allowed in here.
Exactly. It's interesting because in our old house, it was an older home, a converted cottage. There were 2 bedrooms upstairs, and both my girls, when they were young, they shared a bedroom, right?
Right.
And they both would say, Mommy, there's something in the room. There's something in the room, and it's watching me. So So what I did was I, of course, went in the room and said, you need to go. and we're not comfortable with you being here, so you need to leave. And this was right
Yeah.
at bedtime. We would go in every night and say that. So eventually the girls said, you know what, Mommy, we can do that. And I said, okay, well, maybe what we can do is make you monster spray, because they used to call it the
Yeah.
monster, right? We'll make you some monster spray. What smells do you like, and what smells do you think the monster might not like? So they came up with lavender. They really liked the smell of lavender. Now, as
Right.
you know, lavender can also be used as a purification bundle when you're smudging and when you're doing those kinds of rituals. And it was like
Yeah.
instinct for them. So I bought little spray bottles and I filled them with, distilled water and essence, of lavender. And that's what we did every night. And if they got up in the middle of the night to use the potty and they felt unsafe, I could hear them too. It was so cute. They would take spray bottles and they would say, you need to go. You're not allowed to be here. Psst, psst, psst. And you know
Yeah.
what? It was good. It was empowering. They were setting the boundary.
Yeah.
You know something? They never felt unsafe after that. And for years, even when we moved, they would say, maybe we can make some monster spray. And now eventually, because they're, almost 30 and 28, and they
Yeah.
still live at home, I can hear them every once in a while going, okay, you need to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you need to leave us alone. Yeah.
Empowering. And that's what I think people have to understand, is that it is your environment and it's your home. It's your space. You're surrounded by spirits all the time. They
Yeah.
come in and out of your existence, in and out of your space. And some of them might be more bullyish kind of spirits. Some of them are very, very, light. They're just coming in to check you out. They're just passing through. But it's your environment. Take it back. Take charge of your environment.
I think that the difference that a lot of people don't understand is like, we've had, parents where they'll say, well, I know there's something in my kid's room, or this is happening, or it's over in my child's crib or whatever. And I said, well, would you let a stranger do that?
Right.
Because ultimately that's what this is it's a stranger coming into your, but and they'll be like, well, yeah, but I don't want to upset it and stuff like that. Well, you're not threatening it. And that's the main difference, is that you're not going into the room going, if you don't get out of here, I'm going to kick your butt, blah, 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 blah. Because how are you going to do that?
Right. What are you going to do?
Right. Mike Clough says, my house, my rules. 100%. My house, my rules. Like, you're not allowed in my home. Like, get out.
Yeah.
You're not allowed in this room. You're not allowed to go messing with my child. You're not allowed to go do this, right? I have to set the rules. I have to set what it is. But the difference is like, don't come into my house and boo, 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 boo. Like, I'm going to kick your butt and I'm going to do this. And yeah, okay. Well, turn around, I can kick the ass out of you. Like, I'll give you a good ass kicking is what's going to end up happening in one form or another. Maybe not on a physical sense, but like you're you don't need to act macho, right? Whether you're male or female, you don't need to have that,
No. But that's what
that
happens.
behavior.
That's what happens too, because there are entities out there that can be bullies.
You don't need to be Zach Bagans.
Well, no, you don't. You don't. God, no. Yeah, don't go doing that. Don't go doing that. Because really, there are bullyish energies out there. And, if you're more timid, they're going to push back. But you really do have to take back your environment. But it is true that there are bullies out there, bullish energies that you do need to kind of tell to get out. And sometimes you need help, because some people have a problem standing up to bullies, and you need help. And that's where we come in. But again, you have to be respectful even with bullies. You cannot say to them, like you just said, don't piss me off, or I'm going to give you something to. No, don't do that. Don't provoke them. Don't do it. You
wouldn't do that to a stranger in your home. You would find a way to, dissolve the situation.
Yes.
in not that you're being particularly respectful towards obviously a stranger in your home, but you're not going to go in all guns a blaring because you don't know what they're going to do back to you.
That's right.
And chances are, if somebody's entering your space, they're already prepared for the reaction.
Well, that's true. That is
right.
very
And
true.
so, you've got to come from a place where you're pretty much dissolving the situation
That's
in
very true.
one way or another, right? And if it was somebody in your house, it would be like the police, or talking to them, or trying to dissuade them to, or persuade them to leave the house, or whatever it is, right? So you come at it from that type of energy, and again, to some degree, an ounce of respect. Not that you would do that with a particular person in your home, not if it was in a physical sense, but this is a supernatural sense. So respect it in that
Yes, that context.
thank you for
And
using that.
I totally get it. And you know what? Honestly, burning sage, if you're doing it yourself, is not a terrible thing to do. Sage is a purification herb. But if you don't like sage, because a lot of people go, oh man, I can't stand the smell.
Yeah.
That's fine. There's sweetgrass that's a little less
Mm-hmm.
toxic smelling. There's also lavender. Lavender
Mm-hmm.
bundles are fine. You can burn bay leaves even. There's
Metal. Yeah.
Exactly. There's so many other things. Do some research and find out what works for you. There was a case that we had that a child was seeing something in their room, and the parents were scared. So when we had gone over to see what was going on, it definitely felt very precarious in that particular bedroom. Everywhere else in the home, it felt fine. So we really knew that we had to concentrate on that room, and they really wanted whatever it was gone. They were not comfortable with going in and speaking to it.
Right.
They were terrified, but we found out other things about that particular room that needed to change. They had used a completely blackout towel and literally nailed it to the window so that no light could come in.
Oh.
So whatever was in that room liked the darkness, loved the darkness. When the child was playing in that room during the day, they would turn on the overhead light. So they never
Instead of letting the light in.
Yeah. So they never got natural light in that room. So when we went in and said, we really do need to kind of kick out what's here because it's not leaving. The reason is that you're not giving it the opportunity to leave. The window was slammed shut all the time. So we tore away that black towel that had been nailed down, opened up the window, got some fresh air in there, opened up the blinds, and we did burn some sage. And it was interesting because at first, whatever was there didn't want to leave. So we had a really difficult time lighting the sage bundle. It was almost as if whatever was there kept blowing it out until eventually, you know what? They didn't have a choice. They didn't have a choice. We convinced it to go. We said, listen, you need to go. This is not your space. But they were with us. The people in the home were with us. They just didn't want to do it themselves. They were uncomfortable, but their presence was in the room. And that made a world of difference because really that was their space. We were helping them to eject whatever was in that space that was not very nice. And then once it was gone, it was gone. But they understood the need to bring light into the space, air into the space, circulation. Because when you do that, a lot of the darker energies or the ones that are perhaps in hiding, they don't want to be there anymore because it's bright and it's light and it smells good and it circulates well. And honestly, there's a lot of that goes on with paranormal investigators. It's a realization of how to take back your space, right?
But also, too, if the kid's in a little bit of fear after the first one or two times, that fear is building within that space. So creating more and more, again, that sheep type of method, right? Like I'm scared now, the parents are scared, whoever walks into it's a building of. And so it's giving it, food in order to feed it.
Exactly.
And if we cut off the food source and you're giving it an escape, it's going to take that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's true. So, sometimes you do need to coerce something to leave. Yep, absolutely. And there are ways to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But often, in a normal situation, there's spirits passing through your home and you don't have to kick them out. You just don't.
No. It's so funny, like when you say that, because it's so true, right? Like sometimes, you'll have something happen and you're just like, huh. Like, I don't even like, but that it's not something that's hanging around. Like you might just get this. I remember my son this is quite a few years ago. And my son, at the time, he had his computer in our dining room, so he would sit there. And I remember I was sitting there talking to him and he was on his little computers before I allowed it into his room. And, and he was sitting there and we were just having this conversation. We had this garbage can and it was a little full, you know what I mean? But it had one of those lids that, kind of goes up like this. And so
Yes.
the wall is here. And the lid of the garbage can is like up a little bit because, it was full. I needed to clean it out. But there was this pop can that was sort of stuck between the wall and the lid. Okay, so this is the lid, this is the wall, and the pop can is like right in the middle right here. And I was sort of gathering stuff up and, my son had just thrown it there for whatever reason instead of the recycling thing. And I think that I was telling him about that, like, don't, why did you put it there instead of, well, I watched as this can literally rolled up and landed. And both of us are sitting there watching this and it literally went, and we both just sort of looked at each other and we were like, okay, well, don't know what to say about that.
Right.
And he's like, huh. And I'm like, huh, okay.
I know.
But you know what? Like that was the end of that. You know what I mean? Like nothing else happened. Like there was no need to freak out. It was just sort of one of those, like, it was funny because here we are talking about this can, and it was almost like whatever was there just sort of picked up the can and said, okay, look it, here you go. Like,
I love it.
Either telling me to stop bitching about it or telling him to clean it up. Maybe both. I don't know. But it was so funny. Like it just went literally up and down. Yep. And I was like, okay.
Yep. I totally understand that. I do.
But yeah, nothing else ever, you know what I mean? Nope. And even last week, I can't remember exactly, it wasn't last week, it was the week before. My cat and I he was on the ottoman and I was, on the couch, and all of a sudden we heard this big crash coming from the kitchen, and he kind of looked towards the kitchen and then looked at me like as if to say it wasn't me, because normally it's him creating some sort of and I'm looking at him realizing, oh yeah, he's right there. And it was a garbage can lid, like the lid of the garbage can had, fallen off of the garbage can. Who knows why? Don't know.
No, we don't know. Things happen that we can't explain, but it doesn't mean that we have to kick somebody out of our house.
Yeah, there's no need to like panic or have a it's probably, if anything, was telling me maybe something was stinky and take it out. Like, I don't know.
It can be helpful too, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's a matter of how you react to it.
Yes, it is. It is. And not everything is paranormal. And you don't have to, because there's so many myths, you don't have to follow what so-and-so says. If you want to cleanse your house, you don't have to cleanse your house all the time. Things are just what they are. So don't panic, right? Maybe that's what we should have called this episode. Don't panic.
Don't panic.
Don't panic.
Stay calm.
Right.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for watching this week. It was such a pleasure to have you. And Lynda, I'll see you next week. I think it's just you and I again next week. Trevor is still away until the week after, so it will be you and I
It'll be you
hanging out, having fun.
and moi.
Thank you, everybody, for being here, and we truly appreciate you hanging out with us for the week. So, take care. Bye.